Hey guys, so here's my update on the Colt. We're working under saddle and we're working with the bit and we're ground driving. This is the very beginning of our session today after I had saddled him and just had him move around. I have him move around freely without me giving him any cues in the round pen just so he can get the feel of all that equipment on him again. As you can see, he still looks outside the arena for help at the beginning of a session. He doesn't look to me for help yet. Here I'm asking him for faster speed. I keep kissing because I want him to pick up just a couple steps of a lope. Good. Good boy. There, I'm not using any aids other than just holding the camera, so it's hard for him to kind of judge my body language. The camera messes that up a little bit, but he still tries. And my rope was getting really loose, so I didn't ask him to keep going too much because I didn't want him to step through that. There. See, he's still trying to figure out a way out. I'm still not his best friend yet. He doesn't look to me for guidance at the beginning of a session quite yet. Towards the end of the session, he usually does. But even still, this sort of a start from him, where he's just a little bit more relaxed, more willing to put his head down, is good. After I got done free lunging him, I threw the long lines on him. As you can see, my long lines aren't anything special. They're just 2 long nylon lunge lines. And I asked him to start moving out. We did ground drive yesterday, and he really evades the bit. He has a hard time moving freely forward into that bit and stretching into it. So that's something that we are going to ground drive a ton so that he can get used to that pressure before I get on his back, because I want him to have any little explosions or tantrums while I'm on the ground and not on his back regarding the pressure of that bit. So we just ground drive, and I'm doing it in here first. Starting ground driving in an enclosed area is always better in the beginning, just because it helps create a little bit more boundary for the horse, and it helps him understand what the correct answer is without having to get too in his face. I really want to just be as gentle as I can, especially on his mouth, just because he's so young. I keep my lines as loose as possible. I have them loop through the stirrups on each side, and I like that that back line comes back and bumps into his back legs. I want stuff to touch him, flop all over him. I don't be quiet. I want him to have any explosions while I'm on the ground. So I'm not concerned about things flopping around on him, or scaring him with those lines. If they're going to scare him, I want him to get over that sooner than later. So I just let him there. I'm asking him for a stop, and I just pull evenly back on the lines. He has a hard time standing still and just holding it, but we practice that while we're out of the round pen a lot too, where we're just ground driving around, and I just ask him to stop. Here I'm asking him for a change in direction, and I pull that black line gently at first. I just get him to turn his head, and then I give him the cluck to start walking, and as soon as he does, I go slack with my reins to reward, yep, good job, you did the right thing. So he's really got to listen to me to know what his next cue is. But I try and keep a lot of slack in those lines, and I don't worry about the tails at all, especially with my gloves on, because I can't manage that much rope in my hands, and I don't want to get stuck in them, so I just kind of let the tails drag. Here I'm going to move up behind him, and instead of ground driving him from the center like I'm lunging him, I'm going to move up behind him and ground drive him from behind, more like it would be if I was riding him. And every time I move, he assumes he needs to move too, so I just keep giving him that whoa cue. I walk up and rub his butt and say, good job, you standing still. Praise is your best friend, because they're going to get so used to learning your verbal cues when you're ground driving them that they'll listen to that good boy, good boy. He totally knows what that means at this point. They learn that really fast. He knows that means, yep, I did a good job. So pick a praise command and use it a ton. Here he's really unsure. He's like, why are you behind me? Yesterday when I ground drove him, we just went in circles and I lunged him and I just let him get used to the bit. Today we're ground driving behind him. Good. And he's not quite sure why I'm back there instead of where he can see me. And so we go round and round in here for a little while first before I take him out of the round pen. That way if he tries to do any spin maneuvers, I can kind of teach him how to correct those and stuff before we get wide out in the wide open. See how he gapes his mouth? He really doesn't like that bit, but I'm one-handed there. I try and stay as soft as possible so that I'm not pulling on him. He's figuring that all out. He's figuring out that pressure. And so I got to just stay as soft as possible so that he learns to just kind of, push into it and accept that pressure. So after we went out of the round pen, I couldn't video anymore because it required two hands too often. So you're just going to get a lot of stills. But we went down the driveway and I went around as much as possible around the yard away from the other horses. Don't avoid places that are kind of scary. Like you saw the garbage can. I knew that was going to get a reaction out of him, but you purposely make him pass those things while you're on the ground because you have more control when you're on the ground. Here I'm asking him to just stop and stand. He turned around and looked at me like, why? I don't want to stand still. There he's looking at stuff in the distance, and as long as he doesn't move his feet, I don't worry about him looking at stuff as long as he's still listening to me. On the way home, he got a little rushy. He knows where home is, so that's the other thing where it's nice to have him on the ground. You can kind of teach him how to rate that speed while you have more control from the ground and you're not on his back in a more vulnerable position. So we ground drove around the barn for a while, ground drive and both sides. So as you can see, I'm taking pictures from both sides of the horse. Let him know or get him used to you being everywhere behind him, not just directly behind him. Ground drive through scary places like the barn, both ways. We went through the barn a few times. There's lots to see in there and lots to look at, and he wasn't too sure about that. And then we ended the session with tying him in various places and just having him stand. Tying and standing is a real good exercise for Colt. So that's where this guy's at, and we'll keep working with him. He's getting closer to me being on his back, so that's exciting.